So I'm going to be talking about the battles of Trenton and Princeton, the Christmas time conflicts that may have saved the Revolution, starting with the Battle of Trenton. So, in the late fall of 1776, things were not going George Washington's way. His Continental Army had suffered setback after setback. And the British had driven the Americans out of Manhattan. Washington himself had nearly avoided capture. And morale was low, and the American colonists doubted the ability of the army to fend off the British. Perhaps this revolution thing wasn't such a good idea. Some American troops deserted, and as their long enlistments expired, more and more of them were leaving the army. Washington knew he had to do something, or the revolution would be over, so he decided to attack Trenton. After their defeat in New York, they crossed the Hudson River over to New Jersey, then further south into Pennsylvania. Trenton was held by 1,400 Hessians, or German soldiers for hire, on England's payroll. Washington had planned a three-pronged assault on the Hessians. General James Ewing's men would prevent the Hessians from escaping. General John Cadwalader's men, militia, would prevent reinforcements from arriving, and Washington's 2,400 troops would attack on a head-on assault. On Christmas night of 1776, Washington's troops crossed the Delaware. You know that famous painting of George Washington standing on a boat in the middle of a snowstorm? It didn't happen exactly like that because he would have fallen over the side. But Washington's crossing was a pivotal moment in a pivotal fight. Thanks to bad winter weather, only Washington's forces made it through, and the Americans pressed forward. As he approached, George Washington split his troops in two. They flanked the enemy positions while American cannonfall rained down. The Hessians, they were surprised. They weren't expecting an attack on Christmas of all days. Come on, guys, it's Christmas! The Americans routed the Hessians, killing their commander and capturing over 900 of their troops. Only 2 Americans died in the attack from exposure. And they won, so that's pretty good. So despite the victory in Trenton, Washington knew he didn't have enough troops to hold his town, which brings us to the Battle of Princeton. So he withdrew back across the Delaware, and word came out that a large British force under General Cornwallis and Grant were marching south towards Trenton from Princeton. Washington convinced his soldiers to press on for 6 more weeks. Come on, man. That takes some effort. The general took his troops back across the Delaware and into Trenton on December 29th. On January 2nd, 1777, Cornwallis' army arrived. The Americans were on the other side of a little creek called Assunpink. Alright, 1 second here. That is an actual creek. That is a real name. Do not laugh at that name. Okay, it's Assunpink. Now back to the story, alright? Cornwallis has tried 3 times to cross the bridge over Assunpink, but was repelled each time. He figured he had Washington's army trapped. He could even see the campfires from the American army. But no! The campfires were a trick! They were a decoy! Washington had left a few hundred men to tend the fires and stir up some noise with picks and shovels. The rest of his force had hiked 12 miles up to Princeton in the middle of the night. When Cornwallis' army awoke on January 3rd, surprise, no Continental Army. Washington's troops were almost to Princeton, but they weren't there yet. They're very close. The Americans encountered British units south of Princeton, and fierce fighting began. General Hugh Mercer was killed, and the American force was starting to give way, but in rides George Washington, bullets flying everywhere. Washington fled, or the British fled, no, not Washington, and Washington took prisoners from the small British force still in town. The Americans had won the Battle of Princeton. The end. And because, like every movie, we gotta pad out the runtime, here's some good old credits. Animation, sound, and coloring. The end. Those were the battles of Trenton and Princeton.